Hello, I'm George from Pavliscak Studios, and I will be making some marbles today. Probably just one, a monster eye, which is going to be a blue background with a clear half separated. Separating the two hemispheres will be a silver sheet, silver leaf, and that will add some sparkle to the backdrop of the marble. It's hard to see. I'll hold that up separately. And then over the clear, I'll build eyelids, and then I'll decorate with a stringer that I'm going to pull in advance, which is essentially a thread that's twisted with several colors. And then I'll put on an iris, a pupil, and cover it with clear. I'll finish the design on the back, and it should come out finished, looking nice as an eye from one side, eye from the side, and from the back an interesting design. I just need to find I have a special pair of tweezers for handling my tiny silver and gold leaf, which is very fragile. So I'm just going to look around for a second and see if I can put my eye to that, and then we'll get going on the thread that I'm going to pull for the decoration. Alright, I'm going to have to use some regular... Oh, hi Barbie.
Hi.
Just eating that pepper like an apple.
Mm-hmm.
That looks awesome. Are you going for a ride?
Yep. Is that alright with you?
Mm-hmm. Alright, here's Barbie. She's going for a motorcycle ride. You saw her new motorcycle at last week's Puppet pre-show. And it's a beautiful day out, so I will manage.
And it's hot outside, and I've been invited to a swimming pool.
Ooh, who's swimming pool?
Donovan's.
Sweet. That is great. All right, have a good time.
I will.
I'll give you a beep when I'm done. All right, I didn't find...
Join us in the MG.
I did not find my special tweezers for handling this silver leaf. It's very thin. This is kind of a big piece. It needs to be about 1 inch across. It covers the whole equator cross section of the marble and adds a sparkly backdrop to the eye. So that is set. I'm going to look and see and say hello to anyone who's here. And the first thing I'm going to do is, let's run through it again. I'm going to make a hemisphere of colored glass. I'm going to, once that hemisphere is rounded on the back side, it's going to be flat in the middle. I'm going to add silver. I'm going to cover that silver with gathers of clear. Then I'll re-sphericalize it. I'll add eyelids to the eye, and then decorate most of the eye with the stringer that I'm going to pull. Then I'll put on the iris pupil and finish my decoration. I'm also going to add some ultraviolet sensitive glowing glass so that when you hit the marble from the front with a black light, the eye should light up. Under black light, it should have a blue glow. I might put blue and green glow in it. Let's see what I have here. That's this green. And this is a glow dust blue. This green that I'm showing you right here, I mix from about 130-year-old uranium glass that's very bright. And then this blue glow I pulled from glow powder that I encased in clear and then pulled out into a rod to do decorating. Both are neat. They have the glow powder actually will stay activated even in regular light once it's been charged with UV photons. Alright, so I'm going to do the iris with this teal color, and the background is going to be this blue color. So the stringer I'm going to make to decorate is going to be a light and dark green. I'm going to get started on that right now. I'm going to use the light green as the base color and put on a stripe of dark green. I'll melt them together and then twist and pull, and it will make a thread that looks like a barber pole, essentially. And it should look like the color is almost 50-50, but the most of the volume of the color will be the lighter color. I like doing that because the light green, I know from experience, makes a smoother finish on the surface of opaque colored glass, which is sometimes difficult for marbles that have opaque colors, getting the surface to take a shiny finish. So I got the glob, it's melted together, and I'm twisting it as I'm pulling. I'd like it to be a little bit thinner, so I'm going to go faster if I can and pull out. And free one end by melting it. Let's see, what we need. There we go. So that's not as tight as I would like. This is as tight as I would like it right here. It came out a little bit uneven, so I'm going to pull one more. I'll save this one for making beads or mini marbles. I want my decoration to be a little more perfect for a marble, since that's sort of the culmination of my craft. So, second try at a two-tone green narrow thread stringer to decorate the outside of the monster eye that I'm making. About a month ago, I made a dragon eye, which has a enamel powder decorated iris. This will be a monster eye, which has a silver foil decorated iris. That will make the, silver foil sclera. The iris will be colors on the surface of the clear marble. Alright, this one is much more even, and I'll get some good decorations out of that. And that's just about the right length of stringer that I need to decorate one marble. This will be plenty with some extra. Unless I am doing a lot of detail lines. Sometimes I'll make two if I know that I'm going to be, for instance, writing words in the marble, because a lot of times that will take a lot of length, and additionally sometimes I'll clean up the ends of that stringer as I go, so I get a good initial point of contact. Because let's see if you can see this. Let's get the color one. So on the end, when you start writing, you see it's a little crickety ball that's a little bit too big. So when I start writing letters, a lot of times I want, like a calligraphy pen, I want just a tiny tip to touch the surface first. Unless I'm doing a decoration where I want there to be a big initial attachment point, in which case I can hit it with the flame and have it ball up like that, and I get a rounder first attachment point. Alright, so now I got both of my decorations that I need to finish the marble. I've got the foil out that I picked up, which is going to be the midpoint of my marble sphere creation. There. So now I can do my initial gathers of color, which is kind of fun and messy. Might be a little hard to see in the flame. The first thing I do, especially for opaque colors, is wave the rod through the flame. It's called flashing, and I'm getting the tips of these rods up to the first strain point in the glass, which is about 500 degrees. So every time I'm swishing it back and forth, I'm raising the temperature a little bit more, until I get to about 500 degrees. Then I can leave them in there and bring the temperature up the last 1500 degrees without them crackling and popping. Let's see, that one is just about ready. There's a little crackling and popping on this one with the larger diameter. Sometimes you run out of patience for flashing. Alright, now I've had both ends hot. I've touched them together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist these rods together. I'm going to change the angle so the glob sort of folds over onto itself a little bit. And I'll keep doing that. I'll twist it to make sure they're mixing together. I'll bend them and twist them, straighten them back out. Each time I bend them and twist them and straighten them back out, I'm taking the molten portion of the glass and rolling it back over the rod. And it increases the size of the gather. So this gather, I'm going to make probably till it hits about 5/8 of an inch across, maybe a little bit more. Then when I get it to the size I want, I'm going to melt off one of the rods that I'm holding it with. When I have my gather the size that I want, and I've separated up one rod off, I will press it into a marble mold. And a marble mold is essentially a piece of graphite, so like a giant pencil lead, that has a hemispherical, sort of a half sphere, machined into it. And the particular marble molds that I use have differing sizes of that hemisphere machined into it. And I'll use the different sizes depending on the size of the marble that I'm making and the kind of shaping that I want to do. Sometimes I just want to get a rough hemispherical shape to proceed with my design. Other times, towards the end of the marble, I want to make that sphere perfect. And the way I make that sphere perfect is I start the marble, whatever shape it's currently in, after my design process is complete, and I put it in a hemisphere on the marble mold that's bigger than the marble circumference is going to be. Using that, I just use light pressure and get it more and more approximately spherical as I spin it around in there. Then, as the surface cools, I will switch to a marble mold that's smaller than the circumference of the marble sphere that I'm beginning to shape, using just the rim of that smaller hemisphere size, and that rim being a circle. As I rotate the marble and change the axis of rotation, I'm going to make that sphere more and more perfect. Alright, as I was blabbing away, this got to be the right size. So I'm going to heat up one rod and melt it off. The rod is free. Now I'm going to turn my torch up a little bit and get that thing hot enough so that when I press it into my marble mold, which is this, that hemisphere machined graphite surface. Got little ones on this side, bigger ones on this side, and then I have an even bigger one here, and then I have really huge ones for doing paperweights or when I have my glass blowing gear. And I will have that running this fall. We'll see a lot of that. I'm in the process of upgrading some of my glass blowing gear right now, and I'm thinking about switching over to natural gas burners, which will save money. We'll see. I'm doing some research on that right now. Alright, so this is getting hot. You see how it's flopping down when I stop spinning it? I'm going to go for one that's about the size of my finished marble, which is going to be this one. I'm going to press that in. And the graphite takes the heat out of the marble pretty quickly, so in a few seconds it's going to keep that hemisphere shape. Now I have a lot of work to do on the rest of the marble, so I want to switch, get rid of this glass rod, and put a hard handle that I can hold onto this marble for the next 20 minutes while I'm squishing it and decorating it. Anytime I want a handle that's going to be durable and last for a long time and survive a lot of manipulation, I switch to stainless steel. I have welding rods, stainless steel ones, that I've cut to approximately the right length and sanded down. And I'll heat those up so that they're just coming on to yellow hot, and they'll bore right into that glass. I bored into the glass about a 1/16 of an inch. Well, that glass was also pretty hot. By pretty hot, I mean probably 1900 degrees. I've melted off that last glass rod attachment. And now I'm going to flatten this equator cross section into a disc. Then I'm going to pick up that silver, which is going to be the halfway point between the color portion of the marble and the clear portion of the marble. There'll be silver right in between there. Then when it's around again, I'm going to add eyelids to this clear portion to begin forming what is going to be the monster eye. So I have to occasionally heat up this whole thing. If that joint between the metal and the glass gets too cold, it's going to crack off of there. This glass is actually opaque. That little blue reflection you're seeing is not light going through the glass, but the reflection of this flame, in case you were wondering. The wiggliness of that reflection shows you that the surface of the marble is rippled, and I'll use that the reflection of the lights overhead and the rippling of that, wavering of that reflection to help me get the sphere outer surface perfect when I'm ready to finish the marble. So to gather the clear over the silver, I have some larger diameter clear rods, and I've pre-attached some smaller handles to them in some of my off times between marbles, etc. Usually I'll get these rods and they'll be like, 14 inches long. I'll use them until they're about half done. Then I'll put handles on them, because you can't rotate them and be close to the flame and not have it be uncomfortable with the heat. So you need a little space. So this, I can get about that close to the flare. I have control. I can exert the pressure I want, but I'm not getting burned by the flame. So I'm going to another graphite pad that's just flat, that is called a marver plate, next to me. And I'm using that to shape the edge, the disc edge of that hemisphere of glass. After 2 times I've gotten it pretty flat. Glass can be stubborn. It wants to stay bulged out. It wants to be a convex lens-like surface. So making it flat, it won't stay flat. See, it's not perfectly smooth. Now I'm going to heat that surface so it's glowing. Then I'm going to let it cool off just a little bit, and then I'm going to pick up that silver. So here it's cooling off a little bit. I'm going to pick up the silver. There it is. Yep. So now I have to gently cool that in the back flame while I get this clear rod heated up. I'm going to flash it. As I'm flashing it, I'm bringing it closer into the working area of the flame. I call this area out here the back flame, and this is the working area of the flame here. So out here, it's like a regular flame. But since this is a propane oxygen torch, when you get down to this surface where you see the oxygen mixing with the gas, that's about 3,800 degrees, which is hot enough to vaporize this glass, actually. So I work about between 1 inch and 3 inches out from the surface of that torch, generally. So I flashed that clear rod, but it's being stubborn. You can hear it crackling. There's the hemisphere of blue with the silver. I just have to keep that warm enough to keep it from cracking. And I'm heating up this clear rod. I'm going to get a giant ball, molten ball on the end of it. When it gets big, I'm going to squish it right over top of that silver. And then, because I want more clear volume, I'll probably do that 2 or 3 times so that the clear volume equals this blue volume. It doesn't have to be exact. Close is good. I'm going to add more volume to the sphere by adding the eyelid portion, which is going to be the blue background color that I've already used, which is going to define the shape of the eye. So for those of you joining, my name is George, and I am making a monster eye marble, one of my more long-term popular designs that I've been making for about 25 years. I don't make these a lot because I've made a lot of them. But it's worth seeing the difference here between the dragon eye, which I prefer to make now, which has, instead of two halves of a marble where the iris is shown off by a field of silver, the dragon eye is the whole iris is decorated with enamel powders, so it's almost like a painting rather than just a dot with a silver or gold background. Alright, so you can see I've got a molten glob of clear glass that really wants to fall down. I'm going to let it fall down right on this silver. Okay. Pull away in the flame to get it even. I'm going to flatten it so that the clear pushes out and covers over all of the silver. Most of the silver. Now, I can heat that without burning that silver out. I'm going to heat this up a little more vigorously and get another big gather of clear. Since the clear rod has already had a molten droplet on the end of it, this next droplet will come pretty fast. Once I put that second droplet on, I'm going to take advantage of the heat of all of that and the heat I'm adding to this marble now, and put the gather on, melt it off, and then immediately shape it in my marble mold to see how spherical I can get it on the first pass. Then I'll have to do another few passes through the graphite marble molds to get it a little more spherical, enough to put the eyelids on this would-be monster eye. Alright, I'm just not ready. This is getting warmer. And this gather is getting bigger and fluffier. Another 10 seconds, and I'm going to join the two. Alright, so adding that gather, pulling it off, twisting it away. Give it some heat so you can see how orange and hot it is. And get it even hotter. I'm going to go through this biggest mold, and I'm going to go sort of around the equator and make it like an ovoid shape, if I can, sort of footballish. And then by turning and giving it a little more pressure, it will come more spherical. So there's the initial ovoid egg shape. You can see it didn't actually get smooth, but the shape corrected a little bit. So next time I'm going to correct the shape a little bit more, and all those lines should start to disappear. When the whole surface is smooth, then I'm going to come back in and define the shape of the actual eye over this field of silver in the background. The silver actually took on kind of a cool, oxidized galaxy swirl looking thing, which I'll show you in a second. That is not something that you can usually control. So there is that little oxidized swirl. Let's see if we can see it a little bit better in the magnifying glass. And you can see the shape is a little bit smoother. There's some ripples in there. That's the chill marks from the glass being pushed into the graphite mold. I'm going to heat it and shape it one more time. Just because at this point I could put the eyelashes on. It's not super important. Usually, though, I like to have a smooth substrate to put the eyelashes on, because the more ripply the underlying portion of the glass is, the more likely you are to maybe accidentally trap some air. And trapping air and making bubbles under something that you're eventually going to push into the surface, those bubbles can work up and damage your design later. So you have to go and pick those out if you trap them in there. So I've gone to a larger graphite mold than I needed, and then a smaller one in rapid succession, and that is much more spherical. So now, if I'm looking at it in this direction, I'm going to add the eye shape in two swaths. I'm going to get this as a molten gather. I'm going to touch it. I'm going to draw the upper eyelid. I'm going to get the gather again, touch it on the opposite side where I just detached, and form the lower eyelid. I'll show you each one of those. Once I've defined the shape of the eye by touching and stretching that gather out, then I'll come in and backfill the small clear area that remains with this background color. So this one is ready to go. I'm going to touch right along the equator and then stretch and draw my eye lid. You can see what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to do the lower eyelid. Touch in the corner of its would-be eye. And draw the eyelid. So I've made the eye shape bigger than I want it to be. It's going to contract a little as I push these eyelids down. They're going to shrink the size of the eye. So you have to plan for that. Otherwise, the eye on the marble will be ridiculously small if you drew it on the size that you wanted it to come out as. And so now there's a clear area here between that first blue hemisphere and the line of defining the eyelid. I'm going to come in with a hot gather from this blue rod and cover over that clear. You see, I keep bringing this back into the flame because I'm keeping it warm. I want to keep it above 1,000 degrees. I'm going to get a lot of molten glass to work with on the end of this rod. I'm going to push and then swipe. And then you see I've filled that area on this side where you see there was clear. On this side, I filled it in. So now I'm going to do the other side. And then I'm going to melt those eyelids into the surface. Got them. So there is the one I just added. You can see how orange it is. Let's get it over here, see if you can see it better. Ah, there we go. So I sort of painted those windows shut. Now we're going to heat them. Then I'll run it through the marble molds, get it more spherical. Then I'm going to add my iris. I'll add my pupil. Between each of those layers, I'll flatten and melt in that color. And then I'm going to take a piece of clear from a rod and put a gather encompassing over that whole area. And then push it from a flat lens to a curved lens. The flat lens will be just little teeniest dots of color, and then the clear lens that goes over top of it will be pretty much, I'd say, 4 times the volume of the iris and the pupil. And I'm going to use that clear area as an attachment point for when I round the other side of the marble. So I need that clear to protect my design underneath. Now, as I've melted that, you can see it's starting to pull on this side. It's pulling into a sphere. The shape, this side is still a little bit lumpy. So I'll even it out and keep heating it. I was blabbing, so I wasn't paying as close attention as I should have. And once I run this through the molds and get it more spherical, you'll get to see the shape of the eye itself. I'll further define the shape of the eye after I put the iris and pupil on, and I'll make the eyelash decoration, and that will really finalize the shape of the eye. It's my last chance to define the size and shape at that point. So, you can see kind of the shape of the eye. It's pretty big. Let's shrink a little more even. There it is from the side. There's one side, other side, flip corner. Alright, let's put the iris on, and that's going to be this teal color. I'm going to flatten the area that it's going to go on. A flat area, I'm going to be able to control the application of this teal glass on a little bit more than if I was trying to make a perfect circle on a lens shape. So, I just flatten that just a hair for putting my iris and pupil on. And I'll curve it back up when I put the clear lens on it. So, I'm just going to tap and put that little dot of teal on there. Now I'm going to heat it and flatten it. We'll spread out a little bit. Now I'm just going to melt it so it sinks into the surface. You see it bumped up a little bit there? I'm going to heat it so it brings into the plane of that. Now I need some intense black, some very dense black. Regular black glass comes in sort of a lot of different flavors. A lot of black can be just like all of the junk opaquing agents and colors that a company has laying around. Sometimes they can get to that black from greens. Sometimes they can get to that from blues and purples. Sometimes they can get at it from browns. So you want a black that's mixed so well and is a combination of so many colors that it looks black even if it gets stretched out. And that's what I'm using for this pupil. Very densely. So I put the dot on there. It's hard to get exactly centered immediately, so I'm going to melt it and poke it. And I can poke it at a slight angle to try to correct the centeredness of that. And then once I correct the centeredness of it, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger by squishing it flat. Might take a second for the camera to adjust, or if I can get the angle of the light correct. There it is. Now I'm going to melt that in. I'm heating up my nice clear rod that's going to cover all that. Flash it. Heating up the whole marble in case any portions of it towards the end of the metal handle have gotten cold. And so then that surface is heated in, it's very flat. But I don't want it to be too hot when I put this clear on because I don't want it to smear or deform. Like that flower I made in a demonstration last week, I think. That was a very fun disaster zone. Those flower petals were smeared and twisted everywhere. But I hadn't made one of those in many, many years. Alright, so this is getting ready to drop onto the marble. And I've added that little droplet of clear from that pod. Now I'm going to heat it up and lens shape it, and then heat it and smooth it, and then we should see what the iris looks like. It's hard to tell. Let's melt it a little and see what happens. So we switched from me having the heater in here to it being already quite hot, and my glasses have started to slip down my face in 1 week. So I'm going to have to switch to wearing my super attractive glasses strap from here on out. It's about 90 in here before I turned on the torch. Alright, I pushed that lens a little bit flat in a hemisphere mold. Not too aggressively, just a little bit. Now I'm going to melt it in and do what I can to correct the sphericalness of this for the final decoration, which I'm going to go back to those little threads, those bicolored threads that I made at the beginning before I even started the marble. Sometimes I'll have those threads made, or I'll just like wing it. Sometimes during the pre-show I'll point the camera around and you can see I've got quite a selection of little threads that I've pulled in advance, different colors for different projects. Like the flowers I was working on for a project last month. I pulled a lot of threads. They were one shade of blue on the inside and another shade of blue on the outside. And so I made a bunch of those, and I have them ready for if I want to make more of those flowers. I don't like to keep too much of that stuff around because then I can often reach and grab and end up with the wrong thing. And then I'm like, what the heck happened to my marble? I messed it up somehow. I had too much stuff out. I grabbed the wrong thing because I'm wearing these glasses and I'm looking into a flame. And alright, now I've made the iris and pupil. It's now smoothed in. You can see the shape of the eye. And pupil eyes. Now the eye ended up being on the big side. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to decorate the eyelashes and the back of the marble. I'm going to use that decoration to shrink the size of the eye just a little bit. Alright, the marble needs to be evenly heated at all times, so I'm just evening the heat out right now so that it's a similar heat back here towards this metal handle called a punty, and around this area where I've been working on. I'm going to attach this glass, get the tip hot, attach it, do my drawing, pushing the meeting point of the marble and the meeting point of the thread to the same point in the glass as I move both of them around. I'm going to turn the flame down to more of a point. So the first line I'm going to do is one of the eyelashes, yes. So just melting that line in. I'm going to take the edge of that eyelash and go all the way back to the handle. So I have made the first eyelash defining the shape of the eye. Now I'm going to come in with this little thread and do the other eyelash and take that design all the way, as you can see, to the metal handle. Then I'll decorate that space on either side in between. You'll see more as I go. I'll do a little bit, even the heat out, be able to decorate more. So this is the second eyelash. Now you can see the whole eye is defined. Now I'm going to decorate that side and that side. Each time I'll even the heat out, I'll do a little decoration, then I'll go back to the big flame and even things out. I don't want any parts of the marble to get too cold and crack or come loose from my handle. And I'll do 2 rounds of decoration and then I'll show you. And there, you can see, let's get it in the big. See, I added those lines. And the other side, I added those lines. You can see they're sitting way up on the surface. So like a shoelace that I dropped onto the surface of the glass. Once I've finished adding all those, then I will melt them all into the surface. All right, one more round of decorations here. Let me even the heat out a little bit. I'm going to put in a couple of dots where I think dots would like to live on this design. Maybe a few other little marks. One more swirl to put in there. I think that's it. Alright, so it's all just like worms on a wet sidewalk here. It's the eye. You can see the silver showing the iris. Designs. Now, what I'm going to do is melt those in. I'll go through my graphite molds, get this side of the marble that's unattached as spherical as possible. Then, on that clear area over top of the pupil, I will attach a rod and then come back and finish this end. Now what I can see, and I don't know if it's obvious in the camera, is that I must have grabbed the wrong kind of black because the pupil disappeared. So I'm going to go ahead, before I get any farther, and flatten that area one more time. I missed on the iris. There we go. And then put a new pupil on and a new cover of clear, just to save my pupil and my eye design. So the good thing is that should give it a nice 3D look. The bad thing is that it's extra steps. Adding extra steps is sometimes fun, but sometimes it's pain. This time I thought I was done with that part. So now I'm going to go back and put another layer of clear over it. But at least at this time I'm gently heating the whole marble, and all those little designs are starting to merge into one surface. And it's nice if you can do it slowly. If you do it quickly and try to push them together, then sometimes they'll flatten or stretch out in places you weren't expecting. But there's like a perfect medium between pushing it in and letting it pull itself in. Sometimes if you let it pull itself in, then the edges get blurry. So you have to shoot somewhere in between. Now, I added that little clear over the iris, and you can see the glowing orange with the little black pupil now. So hopefully that'll look a lot better when it's cool and finished. You can't always tell what the finished colors are going to be when the marble is hot. In this case, black, you can. So I was able to jump back in there, fix my mistake, and hopefully have it come out looking nice. Being able to fix mistakes, I think, is probably one of the most important skills in any craft. Because there's never, almost never, except for when you're doing like fast production work, any time where things are always going right. You know, if I'm just going to make like 4 or 5 of these in a day, each one is going to have little teeny tiny things that I wish I could correct as I go. If I was going to make 4 or 5 a day for weeks at a time, by the second or third day, they'd probably be pretty smooth. I wouldn't be making those little mistakes. But making the same thing over and over again, while useful for developing your skills, can also be mind-numbingly boring. And you don't want that. Alright. Here I have done the hopefully correct amount of pushing it in and letting it draw itself in. And you can see I've done some pushing into the mold because the surface is chilled and ripply. You see the reflections of the light from above, how they jump. That's a ripply surface of the glass. So now I'm going to heat it, and this time next time I won't push quite as hard into the mold. So I'll just gently spin, let the surface tension of the glass and gravity and rotation do most of the work for me without having to press into it. Balancing all those things, the rotation, gravity, surface tension, the amount of heat from the inside of the marble to the surface of the marble, it's all working for you. The more you do it, the better feeling you get. Or if it's doing the thing you want or the thing you don't want, how you can hopefully fix or adjust 1 or 2 of those things at a time to get it to do what you like. And that feeling comes from doing things over and over again until they're natural. Each technique becomes internalized so that you can do it semi-unconsciously, and then push those techniques together or add them in a row or a string, which is the expression of your creativity. Like a painter, paint the same stroke 100 times. Like doing a marble, you do a flower marble 100 times. You're studying the way pressure works and the width of the line and how much heat you add. So each one can be a study, or you could be shooting for a finished product. I enjoy the process, so not always thinking at least for marbles, about a finished product so much as enjoying what is happening while I'm making it. And sometimes when you get the shape just right or the design just right, even if the marble goes horribly wrong later, that's like one of the best feelings you can have as a craft person. It's like, man, that part came out fantastic. Even if no one else ever gets to see that, even if in the finished product that's completely obliterated, at that moment when I was making it, I was there doing my thing and it was perfect. This is not perfect. I'm still having a good time though. Anyway, this is getting pretty smooth on that side. For a marble like this, which is opaque glass on the outside, it's much more resistant to becoming smooth. So it needs more passes through the mold, more spinning while changing the axis to get it spherical. And then a lot of the marbles that are clear on the outside, you send them through the cherry wood molds, which is usually my final finish pass, where I have wood that's soaked in water, like old style glass blowers, and I run that hot glass on a layer of steam through that even wood, and it cools the surface but leaves just a mirror smooth surface. Some say because it's riding on a little layer of steam. But when I'm doing opaque surface decoration, a lot of times it's 2 or 3 passes through that rather than just one. When people are blowing clear glass, they have a very good feeling of what chemicals to add to adjust the working time, to blow the bubble, how long that bubble or that glass should remain pliable and have a working temperature for making three-dimensional objects. When you start adding chemicals to the glass to change the color and opacity, you're also changing the workability and the time of workability of that glass. And that is why those colors don't always want to sit back into a smooth surface. And you have to persuade them and be patient with them. And so here, after 2 passes through the cherry wood molds, you can see the reflection is smooth and not jumping. Maybe a couple spots here and there, but looking pretty smooth and nice. You can see the backdrop of silver foil on the iris and pupil, and the design that we made on the side for the eyelashes on the side of the marble. So now I'm going to take a clear rod, and I need to round the back end of this marble, and it's going to take me a little while, and I have to do a little bit of work on that end. So rather than, you've seen me a lot of times, I'll take my last attachment point and make just a little teeny tiny pencil point for my last punty attachment, punty being the handle that I'm going to grab this with. So for this one, I want a bigger attachment point, so I'll flatten that out. And this is why I've added some extra clear over top of that iris so that I can attach there so it's firm. And oops, and I jostled it too early. So I have a good attachment point that's not going to come loose with errant tap. especially since I'm going to have to get some tools on this end where this metal handle that I'm about to pull off is attached. See, the end is a little bit wonky. I'm going to superheat that end, pull some of that glass out while turning it to get those colors to meet at a point and sort of just improve the look of that end. So I'm going to heat it, I'm going to grab it, I'm going to pull out, and I'm going to twist. So I grab it, and I'm twisting and pulling out. Now I'm going to break it off where it attaches there. I'm actually going to melt it off and pull so it just rarefies at that point. And then I want to push that point in without messing up the rest of the design. So I have a way I like to do that where I just rock over the end. I'll do it one more time. I don't think I did it very well. So I'm going to give it one more try, a different way that I actually like better, which is I'm going to pull it while pinching it with scissors, so it's going to pinch off a little ball, and that ball will bring the lines that were coming back towards the handle to a point. So I need to get it pretty hot. I'm going to pinch and twist so that there's a little ball. I'm going to crack off that little ball. And hopefully that point is a little bit nicer. It sort of washed out. So, but I want to finish this marble up. If I was being picky about it, I could go back and take little balls off of that end until the end looked really nice. But the first thing I want to do is get this end that's unattached to a punty a little more spherical. So I'm going to put up my heat, get that 2/3 of the marble that's away from the handle hot, run it through the molds. I'll go through the larger hemisphere first and be gently persuasive. And then secondly, I'm going to go and use the rim of a smaller mold, rotating it and changing the axis of rotation. And that gets it pretty spherical. Let's get a magnifying glass. Now I need to get it spherical one more time, and then I can start smoothing it out in the cherry wood molds. Probably 3 or 4 more passes. Most of it's pretty warm. I didn't take a lot of heat out of the glass the last time I put it in the mold. I was just in there for a few seconds, just like now. And got it quite spherical. Now the next time I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to let it start cooling, and when I think I can put it in the cherry wood molds without the surface burning into the wood or catching on the surface, I'm going to put it into those molds and spin it using just the rim of the mold and changing the axis. No pressure into the mold, just spinning. And I can see now that I'm turning it and heating it. I'm not happy enough with the sphericalness of it to run it through the cherry wood mold, so I'm going to put it in the graphite mold one more time. think I've corrected it just a bit more. The surface is pretty wiggly and ripply, which is the problem with opaque glass colors, as I was talking about earlier. So I'm going to give it even a little bit more time to flame polish here, and then let it gently cool before I go to the cherry wood paddles. I call them paddles. It's actually a board with holes in it. I made one end a little narrower so I can grab it easily. And I use one side and then the other side, back and forth. I use each hole for like 3 seconds and then move to the next one. Sometimes I'll just use 2 of those holes on one side. Sometimes I'll use 3 before I pitch it back in the water. So this is ready to go. I'm going to let it get a little cooler and then do the cherry wood. We'll hit 3 holes here. And I can see it came out of sphericalness, so it's going to need 1 or 2 more. And because I was inattentive, I actually did let the wood burn into the surface of the marble on a tiny point. So if I was super picky about this marble, I would try to clean that up with an oxidizing flame, or just make sure I hit the flame just right until I oxidized away that impurity without burning the glass underneath. And it's coming out. Alright, I'm going to hit the cherry wood molds again. I'm going to go a little bit faster this time because it's got a little bit out of shape. There, I can tell it improved a lot there with that pass. Get it evened up a little bit. And I'll show you the surface. So some ripples. So I'm going to polish a little bit more. There we go. You can see the details. Do this 20 or 30 seconds flame polishing, then I'm going to hit it in the cherry wood one more time, and then we're getting to the point where it's time to either put the last handle on this or finish it off. I'm looking at the juncture between my last handle and the iris, and it's still looking pretty nice. So I think I can chill that with my scissors and tap it off in the little Fiberfrax compressed tile that I have just to the left of my marver plate over there. And once I tap it off, I'll pick up my torch, polish that last nub. I'll come over, get a pair of pliers that I've made for picking up marbles, heat them up to 1,000 degrees, grab that marble, and put it in the annealing oven where it will rest. Alright, see how this is flopping? That means I've overheated that last punty. It's not going to release well. So I have to switch another punty to this side, the unattached side, clean up that attachment point, which is going to be a little bit messy now. That is okay. This marble will benefit from one more pass to another handle, smooth out and round the whole thing. Get my cherry wood. And the last handle should be pretty easy. I'm going to use a bunch of recycled light blue rods when I take all my mistakes and I melt them down into a giant crucible. Then I will spend a few days making these light blue dirty rods for handles, and they work for bead cores and the cores of some marbles. Usually I don't like to put older glass into a marble just because I'm devoting so much time to making a marble. I want to make sure that I'm using all the materials with the same density and coefficient of expansion and contraction. And that can change as the fluxing agents that are in the glass to give it its workability vaporize out. So when you first get glass to work, and they say it's long because it's got a lot of chemicals in it that let the temperature range of its workability be wide. As those fluxing agents work out, your glass gets shorter, which means the temperature range of its workability is getting narrower and narrower. So if you have glass that's narrow and glass that's long, even of the same brand, that could be a difference in the coefficient of expansion and contraction and cause annealing and cracking problems. Annealing is the process where you're holding the glass just under the point where it wants to move, where it's a solid but it's about to become a liquid, and all the stress in the glass comes out. Glass in its natural matrix is a tetragonal structure of silicon and oxygen with bond angles all pointing out at 120 degrees. And as you work the glass and add different chemicals in there, so there's different atoms in that tetragonal matrix, it changes the bond angle slightly. And they hate that. That stresses them out. So we send them to the beach, the annealer, to relax. Those bond angles get settle down. Alright, one last pass. The cherry wood. This marble is a little bit stubborn. It does not want to be 100% spherical, but it is looking quite nice. So now I'm going to chill that last contact point with these scissors. I'll just rotate it around, tap it off, come back for my torch. Chill, 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 tap, tap, tap. It's off. It's fast. Now I'm heating it with the torch till it starts getting orange, and you can see that spot. And you can just see it starting to close. So I'll take the torch away and let it relax and close. If I just try to do it all at once by force of this torch and temperature, I will start to burn the glass. So I'll get in there, melt it for a few seconds, then back off, have a look, let the glow fade, and then hopefully I haven't taken too much time with that. I can come in, heat these tongs, and heat them till they're just orange. That doesn't take hardly any time at all. And then once they just start fading to black, I know that's about 950 degrees. I can go in, pick up my marble. I polish the little nub off, and it goes off to the annealing oven. Be right back. All right, thanks for watching. Oh, that's cool. All right, thanks for coming to the demo. We'll have another one next Wednesday. I haven't decided what I'll do yet, but if you want to give me a suggestion of one that you haven't seen for a while, that'd be cool. And oh, I don't have next week I will have a free shipping magic word for those who watch the demo. Otherwise, have a great week. Bye-bye. Mwah.